The room was completely silent. Not the comfortable kind. Not the kind you feel sitting on a porch on a warm evening. No, this was the cold, sharp kind of silence. The kind that wraps around you and squeezes. Zara stood at the center of the biggest hospital boardroom in all of Seoul. Around the long glass table sat 12 of the most powerful doctors and executives in South Korea. Men and women in expensive suits. Degrees on their walls from universities she had only seen in books. They were all staring at her. And not in a good way. Not just because of what she had said, but because of who she was. A young Black American woman. I am 23 years old. Natural hair pulled back in a puff. No medical degree. Just a junior aide lanyard around her neck and a worn brown notebook in her hands. Dr. Kong, head of medical affairs, slowly removed his glasses and placed them on the table with a soft click. You are suggesting, he said carefully, that we change Chairman Baek's entire treatment protocol based on what your grandmother told you? Someone coughed. It was not really a cough. It was a laugh. Zara pressed her shaking hands flat against her thighs. Yes, she said. Smaller than she wanted. The laughter spread around that table like fire. Miss Zara. CEO Mr. Yoon spoke gently from the head of the table. Silver hair. Tired eyes. You have been in this country 3 months. Chairman Baek has 47 specialists on his case. Doctors from Seoul, Tokyo, London, New York. He folded his hands. And you want us to consider advice from a grandmother in rural Mississippi? Zara opened her mouth. The door flew open. A nurse stood in the doorway, face white as paper. Chairman Baek is crashing. My heart rate is dropping. The team is losing him. The room exploded. Chairs scraped. People ran. Dr. Kong was gone before his jacket settled. In 30 seconds, empty. Not one person looked back at Zara. She stood alone in that glass room. The laughter is still hanging in the air like smoke. Seoul glittering cold through the windows behind her. She looked down at her grandmother's notebook. Big looping handwriting in ink has gone slightly purple with age. Baby, when somebody is leaving, it ain't always the body that goes first. Sometimes the spirit gets tired and starts packing up. That's what you gotta catch. That's what you gotta tend to. Zara closed her eyes. She had 20 minutes. Maybe less. And one chance nobody believed she deserved. Hold on. If you are new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We tell stories like this every week. And tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments right now. Let's see how far Zara's story travels. Now, back to our girl. Standing alone. Grandmother's notebook in her hands. A man dying 3 floors above her head. How did a Black girl from rural Mississippi end up in a Seoul hospital boardroom? What brought her here? We have to go back to the beginning. Zara Washington grew up in Holt's Crossing, a tiny community of red dirt roads and pine trees tucked deep in Claiborne County, Mississippi. Most people outside the state had never heard of it. But to Zara, it was the whole world. And at the center of that world was her grandmother, Miss Della Mae Washington. Everyone called her Miss Della. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, with white hair always wrapped in a cloth and hands that were never still. The community called her a root woman, not in any scary way, but in the truest, oldest way. She knew plants. She knew the body. She knew what the land offered if you knew how to ask. People drove hours to sit at Miss Della's kitchen table. Farmers with pain that wouldn't quit. Young mothers with babies who wouldn't sleep. Old men whose grief had settled into their bones. Miss Della would listen, really listen, and then she would go to her shelves and put something together. Tea. A compress. Something pressed and dried and measured by hands that knew without counting. And people got better. Zara grew up watching all of it. From the time she could sit up straight, she was at her grandmother's side. Miss Della narrated everything quietly, like a teacher who knew the best classroom has no walls. You see how he's holding his hands? That's tension living in the shoulders. Notice how she breathes short? That ain't just her lungs. That's years of swallowed worry. The body talks, baby. You just gotta learn its language. Zara listened to every word. She was serious and quiet, not because she had nothing to say, but because she was always paying attention. By age 8, she carried a notebook everywhere, writing down everything Miss Della taught her. Every plant, every remedy, every observation about the place where body and spirit meet. Then the summer Zara turned 17, Miss Della got sick. A lung condition, growing quietly for years. The doctors in Jackson were kind but direct. Treatment would help. But Miss Della was 70 and her body had been working hard a long time. It was the first time Zara had ever seen her grandmother look small. After the doctor left, Miss Della took Zara's hand in both of hers and said words Zara would spend 6 years carrying. "Baby, I taught you everything I know. And everything I know came from women who were never given credit for knowing it. The world forgot about us." She squeezed tight. "Don't you let it stay forgotten." Then she reached under the clinic pillow, because Miss Della was always 10 steps ahead, and pulled out an envelope. Inside was more cash than Zara had ever seen her hold. Saved in small bills over years from the people of Holt's Crossing. "There's a place. Seoul, South Korea. They are mixing the old ways and the new ways there. You need to get inside one of those hospitals. Watch. Learn. And when the time comes, you give them what we know. You make them see it." Zara stared at her. "Grandma, I don't even have a passport." Miss Della almost smiled. "Then get one. I don't speak Korean. You'll learn enough." At the bus station 3 years later, Miss Della held Zara's face in both hands and looked at her steadily. "When they laugh, and they will laugh, that's just fear wearing a fancy suit. You keep going." Zara nodded, hugged her long and hard, got on the bus. Seoul hit her like a wall. The scale of it. The signs in a language her eyes were still learning. Streams of people moving with the fast energy of a city that never slows down. She stood outside Incheon Airport with her bag, her grandmother's notebooks, and the address of a tiny shared room. She was the only black person she could see in any direction. She took a breath, got in a taxi. The first weeks were the hardest of her life. The language steeper than the app prepared her for. The room is smaller than the photos. People stared on the subway, not always unkind, but always present. She ate mostly convenience store rice while her stomach adjusted. But she kept going. At Seoul Medical Center, the coordinator Mizo looked her up and down and said very little. "Junior patient aide. Water, company small errands." The very bottom of the ladder. Zara said thank you like she had been handed something precious. Because she knew what Miss Della knew. The bottom of the ladder is the best place to watch everything. For 2 months, she moved quietly through that hospital like a woman memorizing a map. She watched doctors, listened to nurses, observed how patients shifted, in face, in posture, in energy day after day. She learned Korean faster than anyone expected. Enough to greet patients in their own language. Enough to understand conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. Patients started asking for her by name. Then Chairman Baek arrived. Chairman Baek Juno, 71 years old. His name was on 3 buildings within walking distance of the hospital. 50 years of building an empire from nothing. Steel, shipping, technology, 60,000 employees. And now his body was failing in a way all that power could not stop. Rare aggressive autoimmune condition. His immune system attacked his own organs. 47 specialists. Endless meetings. Treatments that cost more than Zara earned in a year. Every week he got a little weaker. Zara saw him for the first time covering for a sick aide, bringing his afternoon water on a Tuesday. She had no idea who he was. Just saw an old man by the window. She almost left. But she stopped, because she saw something in the way he was sitting that she recognized from Miss Della's kitchen table. The particular stillness of a person who had quietly, privately, started to let go. Hands relaxed in his lap with the specific weight of someone no longer gripping. Shoulders angled like a man memorizing the view, rather than living in it. The spirit is getting tired. Starting to pack up. He noticed her standing there. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked in Korean. "I didn't want to disturb you," she answered carefully in his language. He turned, took her in, the natural hair, the brown skin, the stillness in her posture. "You're American." "Yes, sir." "Why are you in Seoul?" She answered honestly. "To learn. And to give something back." He studied her for a moment, turned back to the window. "Leave the water." Not a dismissal. Something closer to permission. She came back the next Thursday. And the one after. Always during the quiet window. She would tidy small things and sit near the door and sometimes hum softly. The old songs Miss Della hummed while she worked. Chairman Baek never told her to stop. He started leaving notes on his tray. No requests. Just thoughts. The kind a man writes when he needs to think out loud, but has nobody safe to think at. Zara read every one. And while she listened, she was also watching. Building a picture in her grandmother's notebooks late at night by phone light. A picture she was becoming more and more certain the 47 specialists were missing completely. Chairman Baek was not only physically ill. He had lost the will to fight. And she could trace almost the exact day it happened. Something in his family, weeks before he checked in. Something that had broken a door inside him. And without that door being reopened, no medicine on earth was going to pull him back. She spent 2 weeks organizing everything into something she could present. She used medical language she had absorbed over months. She made it as clear and structured as she could. Then she walked into that boardroom. And they laughed. And then the nurse came running. Now Zara stood at the stairwell door. She had stopped thinking. Her feet were already moving. 3 floors. 2. 1. She pushed through the door to the top level. And stopped. A wall of a man in a dark suit and earpiece stood directly in front of Chairman Baek's suite. Arms crossed. Eyes already decided. No unauthorized personnel. Behind him she could hear the monitors screaming. The tight, urgent voices of the team. Equipment scraping floor. And underneath all of it, barely there. A sound she had heard once before at Miss Della's table. A man who had come in on a February afternoon, speaking in a voice already traveling far from his body. Chairman Baek was making that same sound. Zara looked the guard in the eyes. She did not step back. And she said something, 5 quiet sentences, she had no plan for until they left her mouth. Something shifted in the guard's face. His arms uncrossed. He looked at the door. Then back at her. And he stepped aside. This is what Zara said. She did not beg. She did not argue. She did not pull out her notebook or explain her grandmother or talk about Mississippi. She looked that security guard directly in his eyes, and she spoke 5 quiet sentences in careful Korean. My name is Zara Washington. I am not a doctor. But I know something about that man in there that his doctors do not know. If I am wrong, you can have me removed from this building permanently. But if I am right, and I believe I am, you will have been the person who made the difference. Silence. The guard's jaw moved slightly. His eyes went to the door. Then back to her face. He was reading her the way men trained to detect threats read everything. Looking for the lie, looking for the angle. He did not find one. Because there was none. She was just a young woman from Mississippi standing in a hospital hallway in Seoul with worn notebooks and her grandmother's words and the specific kind of calm that only comes from having absolutely nothing to lose. He stepped aside. Zara walked through the door. What she walked into was controlled chaos. The suite was large, the largest private room in the hospital, all clean lines and muted colors and enormous windows showing the Seoul skyline. But right now it looked nothing like the quiet place she had visited on Thursday afternoons. There were 6 people crowded around Chairman Baek's bed. Monitors everywhere. Tubes. Equipment she could name now after 3 months of watching and listening. Dr. Kong was at the center of it, barking instructions in rapid Korean. A junior doctor was calling out numbers. 2 nurses moved with the tight, efficient speed of people operating on the edge of emergency. Nobody noticed Zara come in. Chairman Baek lay in the center of all of it. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him. The powerful broad shoulders she remembered from their Thursday visits seemed to have folded inward. His eyes were half open, not the sharp, observant eyes that had taken her apart the first time they met, but something dimmer. Something that was watching the room from a great distance, like a man already standing on the other side of a river looking back. His lips were moving. Slightly. Almost nothing. Zara moved closer. Dr. Kong finally saw her. His face went from focused to furious in less than a second. What is she doing here? Someone get her out. Wait. The voice came from the corner of the room. Everyone turned. Sitting in a chair by the window, so still that Zara had not seen him when she entered, was a young man. Maybe 30 years old. Sharp face. Expensive clothes hanging on a body rigid with tension. Dark circles under his eyes that said he had not slept in days. Chairman Baek's son. Baek Min-jun. Zara had seen his photograph in the notes the chairman had left on his tray. She had never seen him in person before. He had apparently not visited much in the past weeks. He was looking at Zara with eyes that were red at the edges but completely alert. You're the aide, he said quietly. The American one. He mentioned you. The room went very still in a different way from before. Dr. Kong opened his mouth. I said wait. Min-jun's voice was quiet, but it had iron in it. The voice of someone who had grown up watching his father command rooms and had absorbed it without meaning to. He stood up slowly and looked at Zara. He mentioned you in his notes. He said. His voice caught slightly. He pressed past it. He said you were the only person in this building who listened without an agenda. Zara did not know what to say to that. So she said nothing. She looked at Chairman Baek. His lips were still moving. She took 3 steps toward the bed. Dr. Kong made a sound of protest. Minjun held up one hand, and the doctor stopped, not happily, but he stopped. Zara leaned in close enough to hear. It was one word. Repeated. Barely breathing. A name. She straightened up. I turned to Minjun. Who is Sora? She asked. The effect was immediate and devastating. Minjun went white. Not pale, white. Like something had been pulled out from under him. He grabbed the back of his chair with one hand. Dr. Kong and the medical team exchanged glances. How do you know that name? Minjun's voice had dropped to almost nothing. He's saying it, Zara said simply. Right now. That is the word he keeps saying. Minjun looked at his father. Really looked at him. Maybe for the first time since he had come into this room. He crossed the space between them in 3 steps and leaned down over the bed and listened. His face crumpled. Just for a moment. Just for a second. Then he pulled it back together with visible effort. He straightened and turned to Dr. Kong. Give us the room. Dr. Kong stared at him. Mr. Baek, your father's condition right now requires. The monitors are here. The crash cart is outside the door. I am asking for 5 minutes. Minjun's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Give us the room. Dr. Kong looked at Zara with an expression that told her this conversation was not over between them. Then he gestured to the team and they filed out. The door closed. 3 people left in that room. Chairman Baek was barely conscious in bed. His son stood rigid beside him. And Zara, who suddenly felt the full weight of being exactly where she was with no backup and no credentials and no plan beyond her grandmother's notebook and everything Miss Della had ever taught her. She opened the notebook. Sora was his daughter, Minjun said. He was looking out the window at Seoul. His back to Zara. His voice was so flat and controlled it hurt to hear. She died 11 years ago. He stopped. Started again. He never got over it. But he never talked about it. Not once. Not to anyone. He buried it the way he buried everything that was too big to carry. He just kept building. I kept working. Keep moving so fast that nothing could catch him. He turned around. 3 months ago, I told him I was leaving the company. That I didn't want the empire. That I wanted a different life. His jaw tightened. He didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Then he checked himself into this hospital. And Minjun spread his hands. He just stopped. Zara looked at Chairman Baek. Then in the notebook. In Miss Della's big looping handwriting, halfway down the page. Grief that ain't grieved turns into the body's work. It finds somewhere to live. And it will burn that house down if you let it. He didn't get sick because of the grief, Zara said quietly. The condition is real. The doctors are right about that. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But the reason he stopped fighting, the reason he's laying there saying goodbye right now, is the grief. That is the thing with your sister's name. And that is the thing with you. Minjun was very still. He thinks he already lost everything that matters, Zara continued. His daughter 11 years ago. And 3 months ago, in his mind, he lost you too. Not because you're gone, but because you chose a different road. And a man who built everything he built, he tied his love to his legacy. So when the legacy got rejected, he felt like the love did too, Minjun finished. His voice had gone rough. He turned back to the window. His hand came up to press against the glass. Outside, Seoul moved and breathed and hummed the way it always did, enormous and indifferent and alive. I didn't reject him, Minjun said. I didn't want the company. I wanted him. Just him. Not the chairman. Not the empire. Just my father. Zara looked at the man in the bed. His lips had stopped moving. His breathing had gone shallower. She felt something tighten in her chest. She had seen this before. Not often, but enough times at Miss Della's kitchen table to know what it meant when the breath went quiet like that. She crossed to the bed, pulled the chair close, sat down right beside him, close enough that when she spoke it would land. Chairman Baek, she said. Softly, clearly, in Korean. Nothing. She tried again, louder this time. Chairman Baek, I need you to hear me. A flutter behind his eyelids. The smallest thing. But it was there. She opened her grandmother's notebook, and she did something she had never done in a professional setting. Something that 6 months ago, she would have been too scared to do in front of anyone. She started to hum. Low and slow. The old song. The one Miss Della hummed in the hills when she was working. The one with no name that was older than anyone alive could remember. The one that had no words but said everything anyway. Dr. Kong would have called it absurd. The 12 people in that boardroom would have laughed. But Chairman Baek's breathing changed. Not dramatically. Not the way things change in movies with a gasp and a sudden opening of eyes. But quietly, the way a door eases open when the wind shifts. His chest rose a little fuller. The tight-drawn lines around his mouth softened by the smallest degree. Minjun had turned from the window. He was watching with his arms at his sides and his face completely unguarded in a way that probably hadn't happened since he was a child. Zara stopped humming. She looked at Minjun and said something she had no medical authority to say, and said it anyway, because Miss Della had always told her that sometimes the truest medicine is the simple true thing. He needs to hear your voice. Not about the company. Not about any of that. Just tell him you're not going anywhere. Tell him Sora is at peace. Tell him, she paused. Tell him the things you came here to say, but haven't said yet. Minjun stared at her. I'm not a doctor, she said quietly. I know that. You know that. Everybody in this building knows that. But I know what I'm looking at. And what I'm looking at is a man who needs his son more than he needs another specialist. A long silence. Then Minjun walked to the bed. He pulled up a chair on the other side. He sat down. He leaned forward and he took his father's hand. Carefully, like he was handling something fragile. Something he had been afraid to touch in a very long time. And he started to talk. Zara quietly moved toward the door to give them privacy. She almost made it. Stay. Minjun's voice. Low. Not a command. A request. She stopped with her hand on the door. Please, he added. She turned back around. Found a spot by the window where she could be present without being in the way. She held her grandmother's notebook against her chest. Outside, Seoul blazed with 10,000 lights. Inside, a son talked to his father about a sister who had been gone 11 years, and about an empire that had been built for the wrong reasons, and about love that had gotten so tangled up in expectation that neither of them could find where one ended and the other began. Zara listened. She watched Chairman Baek's face. And slowly, so slowly that at first she thought she was imagining it, the color began to come back. Just slightly. Just at the edges of his face. Just enough. The monitors, which had been screaming when she walked in, settled into a steadier rhythm. Not fixed. Not recovered. Not out of danger. But holding. Like a flame that had been on the absolute edge of going out, and had found, from somewhere, just enough air to keep burning. Zara let out a breath she had been holding since she left that boardroom. Then the door opened. Dr. Kong walked back in. He looked at the monitors. His eyes moved across the readings with the rapid precision of a man who had spent 30 years doing exactly this. His expression did not change. But something shifted behind his eyes. He looked at Chairman Baek. Then at Minjun. Then, for a long, slow moment, at Zara. His pressure is stabilizing, Dr. Kong said carefully. Like the words cost him something. He said nothing else. He did not have to. Zara nodded once. But just as the room began to exhale, just as it seemed like the worst was behind them, her phone buzzed. She looked down. A message from Ms. O, the coordinator. 3 words that made Zara's stomach drop straight to the floor. Come to my office. And then a second message, for seconds later. Bring your things. 3 words. That was all. But Zara had grown up in a world where 3 words could change everything. Where a doctor says it came back and a whole family reorganizes itself around that sentence. Where a landlord says you're out and a mother starts counting days. Where a teacher says you don't belong and a child spends the next 10 years trying to prove otherwise. 3 words were enough. She looked at the message one more time. Then she put her phone in her pocket. She looked across the room at Chairman Baek, breathing steadier now, color holding, Minjun still at his side talking quietly, and she felt 2 things at exactly the same time. Pride and fear. She slipped out of the suite without a word. Ms. O's office was on the 2nd floor. Small and neat with one window that looked out onto the hospital's interior courtyard. Ms. O herself was a compact woman in her 50s with short hair and reading glasses she wore pushed up on her forehead like a second set of eyes watching everything from above. She was not alone when Zara arrived. Dr. Kong was there, standing by the window with his arms crossed and his face arranged into the careful neutral expression of a man who has already made a decision and is now simply performing the conversation that follows it. Zara stood in the doorway. Close the door, Ms. O said. Zara closed it. She did not sit down because nobody invited her to. She stood in the center of that small office the same way she had stood in the boardroom. Hands at her sides, back straight, chin level. The way Miss Della had taught her. Stand like you belong anywhere you plant your feet. Ms. O folded her hands on her desk. You entered a restricted floor without authorization. You accessed a patient's suite without clearance. You were present during an active medical emergency without any medical credentials whatsoever. She paused. Do you understand how serious that is? Yes, Zara said. Your trial position is terminated effective tonight. There it was. Zara had known it was coming from the moment she read the message. She had known it the moment she stepped aside for the security guard to pass. She had chosen it anyway. She breathed through it now the way Miss Della had taught her to breathe through hard things. Slowly, all the way down, let it move through you rather than into you. I understand, she said. Dr. Kong spoke for the first time. You could also be reported to hospital administration for patient privacy violations. That carries legal consequences in this country. His voice was measured. Not cruel. Just precise. The way a surgeon is precise. You are in South Korea on a tourist visa extension. A legal complaint could affect your ability to remain in the country. The room felt smaller suddenly. Zara thought of her tiny shared room. Her grandmother's notebooks spread across the floor each night. The convenience store rice. The 3 months of learning Korean one word at a time on the subway. The envelope of cash Miss Della had saved in a tin box under the floorboard. She thought of what Minjun had said. He said you were the only person in this building who listened without an agenda. I know what I did was against the rules, Zara said. Her voice was steady. She was almost surprised by how steady it was. And I am not going to pretend otherwise. But Chairman Baek's vitals stabilized tonight. Not because of anything I gave him. Not because of any medicine. Because his son spoke to him. Because someone identified what was actually happening beyond the physical. She looked at Dr. Kong directly. His pressure dropped back to a range your team has been trying to reach for 6 days. You saw those readings yourself. Dr. Kong said nothing. I am not claiming I saved him, Zara continued. His doctors are doing that. You are doing that. I am only saying that what my grandmother taught me, what generations of women in my family understood about the space where the body and the spirit meet, that knowledge helped tonight. It was real. And it worked. Silence. Ms. O and Dr. Kong exchanged a look that Zara could not fully read. Then the office door opened. Minjun Baek walked in. He was still in the same clothes. Still looked like a man who had not slept in days. But something in his face had shifted since the suite. Something had settled that had been unsettled for a very long time. He looked at Ms. O. Then at Dr. Kong. Then at Zara. I would like her reinstated, he said simply. Ms. O blinked. Mr. Baek, the situation is more complicated than. My father is the reason this hospital has its new East Wing, Minjun said. Not a threat. Just a fact delivered without temperature. And my father, 1 hour ago, responded to human intervention in a way he has not responded to anything in 3 weeks. The monitors confirm it. Dr. Kong saw it himself. He paused. I am not asking for anyone to abandon their protocols. I am asking for this woman to be given a legitimate role in my father's care team. In whatever capacity can be arranged. Dr. Kong cleared his throat. Mr. Baek, she has no medical qualifications. Then create a role that doesn't require them. Minjun's voice remained quiet. That made it more effective, not less. Patient wellness. Cultural consultation. Whatever title makes the administration comfortable. I want her in that room. Another silence. Longer this time. Ms. O looked at Zara with an expression that had changed considerably since the conversation began. She was recalculating. Zara could see it happening behind the reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. I will need to take this to the director, Ms. O said finally. Of course, Minjun said. I will speak with the director myself. Tonight. He turned to leave. At the door he stopped and looked back at Zara. My father wants to see you tomorrow morning. If that is acceptable to you. Zara nodded. She did not trust her voice at that exact moment. Minjun left. Ms. O and Dr. Kong looked at each other for a long time. Then Dr. Kong did something Zara did not expect. He pulled out the chair across from Ms. O's desk and sat down. He loosened his collar slightly. He looked at Zara not with the cold precision of the boardroom, but with the tired, honest face of a man who has been doing a difficult job for a very long time. Sit down, he said. Quietly. She sat. Tell me about your grandmother. She told him everything. Not the version she had prepared for the boardroom. Cleaned up, medically framed, structured for an audience that needed to be convinced. The real version. Holt's Crossing. The red dirt roads. The kitchen table. The plants on the hillside, and the names Miss Della gave them, and the reasons she gave for each one. The way she listened to people. The things she saw in a person's face and hands and breathing that no chart could capture. Dr. Kong listened. He did not smile. He did not lean forward with enthusiasm. He was not converted in a moment of sudden belief. He was a man of science, and he remained one. But he listened with the particular quality of attention that serious people give to things they are genuinely trying to understand. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. I trained for 12 years, he said. Medical school. Residency. Fellowship. 30 years of practice after that. He looked at the desk. And I have had patients, good patients, compliant patients, patients receiving the exact correct treatment, who simply decided to stop. He was quiet for a moment. We do not have good answers for that. We have theories. We have psychiatry referrals. But if someone decides at the deepest level that they are done, he stopped. The body follows, Zara said softly. He looked at her. That is what my grandmother always said. The body follows where the spirit leads. Dr. Kong was quiet for a long time after that. Then he stood up. He straightened his jacket. He was Dr. Kong again, composed, precise, impenetrable. But something had shifted by a degree or two behind his eyes. There is a patient wellness coordinator position that has been vacant for 4 months, he said, looking at Ms. O rather than Zara. It requires a background check and a hospital orientation certificate, both of which can be completed within the week. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. It would give her legitimate access to patient floors. He walked out without looking at Zara again. Ms. O watched the door close. Then she looked at Zara over the rim of her pushed-up glasses. Don't make me regret this, she said. I won't, Zara said. She walked out of that office at 11:47 at night. The hospital corridors were quieter at this hour. The overhead lights dimmed for the evening shift. The sounds different, softer, slower, the particular hush of a building full of people sleeping and healing, and sometimes doing neither. Zara sat down on a bench near the elevator bank. She put her face in her hands. Not crying, just breathing, just letting the last 4 hours move through her and out of her the way Miss Della had taught her. Don't hold the hard things inside you, baby. Let them pass through like the weather. She sat there for a while. Then she opened the notebook. She had been turning one question over in her mind since she left the suite. Something that had nagged at the edge of her attention all through the conversation with Dr. Kong and Ms. O and Minjun. Something she had noticed while sitting by Chairman Baek's bed that she had not had the space to fully examine yet. When his breathing had steadied, when the color had begun to return to his face, she had been watching his hands. She always looked at her hands. Miss Della had taught her that the hands tell you things the face tries to hide. And she had seen something. His right hand, the one Minjun was not holding, had moved. Just slightly. Not a reach. Not a gesture. More like a reflex. His fingers had curled toward something that wasn't there. Like he was reaching for something he expected to find. She had seen that exact movement once before. At Miss Della's table. A woman in her 60s who had lost her husband. She would reach in her sleep for the space he used to occupy. Muscle memory. The body was still looking for what the mind had not finished grieving. What was Chairman Baek reaching for? It was not Minjun. Minjun was on the other side. Zara flipped back through the notes she had been keeping for 3 months. All the small observations. All the details that had seemed minor at the time. She read slowly, carefully, the way Miss Della had taught her to read a person, looking not for the big obvious things but for the pattern underneath. She found it 40 minutes later. One line. Written 6 weeks ago after a Thursday visit. Something the chairman had said while looking out at the Seoul skyline. She had written it down without fully understanding why it mattered. The garden is the only thing I built with my own hands. She stared at the line. Flipped forward. Cross-referenced. Found 2 more references she had not connected at the time. One from a note he had left on his tray. One from something Minjun had said tonight without realizing its significance. She sat up straight. Because she understood now what the specialists had missed. Not just the grief. Not just the will. There was something more specific underneath all of it. Something concrete and addressable and, if she was right, something that could be the turning point in his recovery. She grabbed her pen. She started writing fast, filling 2 pages in the cramped, urgent handwriting she used when ideas were moving faster than her hand could follow. She was so focused that she did not hear the footsteps until they stopped directly in front of her. She looked up. Dr. Kong was standing there, still in his jacket. He had his own folder of notes under one arm. He looked at her sitting on that bench at midnight with her grandmother's notebook open and her pen moving, and the particular lit-up expression of someone who has just found the missing piece of something important. He studied her for a moment. "My office," he said. 8 o'clock tomorrow. Zara nodded. He walked away. She looked back down at her notes. And then her phone rang. The screen showed a Mississippi area code. A number she knew by heart. Her cousin Brianna, who only ever called late at night when something had happened. Zara's hand was not steady when she answered. "Bree," she said. "What's wrong?" It was not a question. She already knew from the silence on the other end. The kind of silence that arrives ahead of words because the words are too heavy to lead with. "Zara." Brianna's voice was thick. "It's Miss Della, baby. She's in the hospital. 6,000 miles away, the woman who had sent her here needed her." And for the first time since arriving in Seoul, Zara did not know what to do. Zara sat on that bench and did not move for a full minute. The phone was still pressed against her ear. Brianna was talking, something about a fall, something about the hospital in Jackson, something about the doctors saying they needed a family present. But the words were coming through like they were underwater. Muffled. Distant. Like Zara's mind had traveled somewhere far ahead of her body and was standing in a Mississippi hospital hallway already, looking at a bed she was not ready to see. "Zara, you hear me?" "I hear you," she said. "You need to come home." She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw Miss Della at the bus station, both hands holding her face. When they laugh, and they will laugh, that's just fear wearing a fancy suit. You keep going. She opened her eyes. "How is she right now?" "At this exact moment." "Stable," Brianna said. "But Zara, she's 78. The fall was bad. Her hip. Is she awake?" "Yes." "Can you put her on?" A pause. Shuffling. The particular ambient sound of a hospital at night. The same in Mississippi as it was in Seoul, she realized. The same hush. The same wait. Then a voice she would know anywhere on earth. "Baby girl." Rough and warm, and a little slower than usual, but unmistakably, completely Miss Della. Zara pressed the phone hard against her ear. "Grandma, don't you dare book a flight." Zara almost laughed. "Almost. Grandma, I mean it. I broke my hip, not my mind. Brianna is here. Your Aunt Cora is coming in the morning. I have got more people around me than I know what to do with." A pause. A breath that was slightly labored but steady. "You finish what you went there to do. Grandma, you are more important than." "I know I am," Miss Della said simply. "And that is exactly why I am telling you to stay." Another breath. "How is your chairman?" Zara blinked. "He stabilized tonight." "Because of what I taught you." "Because of what you taught me." A long silence. Then Miss Della made a sound that was soft and deep and satisfied in the way that only comes from a lifetime of being right about things people doubted you about. "Then you stay," she said. "You finish it. And then you come home and tell me every single detail." "Yes, ma'am. I love you more than words know how to say." "I love you more than that," Zara said. The line went quiet. Zara sat on that bench for another moment. Then she straightened her back, picked up her grandmother's notebook, held it against her chest for just a second. Then she went back to writing. At 8 o'clock the next morning, she walked into Dr. Kang's office with 2 pages of notes and the specific expression of someone who has not slept but has spent the sleepless hours doing something useful. Dr. Kang was already there. Coffee on his desk. His own files open. He looked at her when she entered and gestured to the chair across from him without a word. She sat. She put her notes on the desk between them. He looked at the pages. Then at her. "Talk." "The garden," she said. He waited. "Chairman Baek said something 6 weeks ago that I wrote down without fully understanding it at the time. He said, 'The garden is the only thing I built with my own hands.'" She turned her notes so he could read them. "Everything else he built with money, with people, with systems. But there is a garden somewhere, I believe at his original family home outside the city, that he planted himself. Decades ago. Before the empire. When he was still nobody." Dr. Kang was listening. "His daughter Sora," Zara continued. "I cross-referenced everything. She is connected to that garden. Something happened there between them. I don't know exactly what, but his body reaches for it. Literally. His right hand. I watched it last night." She paused. "He is not just grieving his daughter abstractly. He is grieving a specific place and a specific time and a specific version of himself that existed before everything got so large and so complicated. She leaned forward slightly. Dr. Kong, what if we brought the garden to him? Silence. Not literally, she added quickly. But soil. Living plants. Smell and texture. Something real from that place. My grandmother always said the body remembers through the senses long after the mind has given up. She opened the notebook to a page near the back. Miss Della's handwriting is large and certain. Give a grieving body something real to hold. Not words. Not medicine alone. Something it can touch and smell and remember itself through. Dr. Kong looked at the notebook for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Minjun knew exactly which garden. He arrived at the hospital that morning looking like a man who had slept for the first time in weeks. Not long, not deeply, but enough. He listened to Zara explain without interrupting once. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said yes. He drove out himself that afternoon. He came back with a box. Inside was soil from the garden in a sealed container. 3 small plants in clay pots that his father had grown from seed 40 years ago and that the groundskeeper had maintained ever since without fully knowing why they mattered. A small smooth stone from the garden path. And a photograph, old, slightly faded, of Chairman Baek and a little girl standing in that garden. The girl is maybe 7 years old, laughing at something outside the frame. Sora. Zara arranged it carefully on the table beside the chairman's bed that evening. The plants where he could see them when he turned his head. The soil in an open container where the smell could reach him. The stone placed gently in his right hand, the hand that kept reaching. His fingers closed around it immediately, like they had been waiting. What happened over the next 9 days did not happen dramatically. There was no single moment, no sudden miracle, no scene like the ones in movies where a man's eyes fly open and everyone cheers. It happened the way real healing happens. Slowly, in increments so small that some days you could not see them at all, and you had to trust that they were there. Day 1. Chairman Baek held the stone and slept more peacefully than he had in weeks. The nurses noted it in his chart without commenting on why. Day 2. He asked for water using a full sentence. The first full sentence in 4 days. Day 3. He turned his head and looked at the plants for a long time without speaking. Then he said to Minjun quietly, I planted those from seed. Minjun said, I know, father. And neither of them said anything else, and somehow that was exactly enough. Day 4. His inflammation markers dropped for the first time in 3 weeks. Dr. Kong reviewed the labs twice. Said nothing to Zara directly but left a copy of the results on the patient wellness coordinator's desk. Her desk now, small and tucked at the end of the 3rd floor corridor, with a single line written at the top in his precise handwriting. Consistent with reduced cortisol response. Correlation noted. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement she was going to get from him, and she knew it, and she took it with both hands. Day 5, Chairman Baek asked to see her. She came in that afternoon and found him sitting up. Not fully, but more than before. The stone is still in his right hand. The photograph propped against the plant pot where he could see it. He looked at her with eyes that were closer to the sharp observant ones she remembered from their Thursday visits. Not all the way back, but traveling in that direction. Sit, he said. She sat. He looked at the photograph for a moment. She loved that garden, he said. Used to follow me around while I worked. Asked the name of every single plant. Every single one. The faintest movement at the corner of his mouth. I didn't always know the answers. I had to make some up. He paused. She knew I was making them up. She never said so. Zara smiled. I stopped going there after she died, he said. 11 years. I paid someone to keep it alive, but I never went back. He looked at the small plant on his table. I think I was punishing myself. Zara said nothing. She had learned from Miss Della that some moments need a witness more than they need a response. Your grandmother, he said after a while. She taught you to see all of this? Yes, sir. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She is, Zara said. Present tense. Deliberate. He looked at her. She is still living? She broke her hip 3 days ago. She is in a hospital in Mississippi right now. Zara kept her voice even. She told me to stay and finish what I came here to do. Chairman Baek was quiet for a long moment. She sounds like someone who built things with her hands, he said finally. Her whole life, Zara said. He nodded slowly, like something had been confirmed rather than learned. On the 14th day, Dr. Kong presented the full case to the medical board. Not just the physical progress, and the progress was real, documented, significant. Inflammation down. Organ function improved in ways the treatment alone did not fully account for. Energy returning in measurable increments. He presented all of it. And then he said something that Zara, standing at the back of the room, the same room where 12 people had laughed at her 2 weeks ago, did not expect to hear from him. There are dimensions of patient recovery that our current protocols do not adequately address, Dr. Kong said to the board. His voice was the same measured, precise voice as always. But the words were different. Psychological, emotional, and what I will call, for lack of better existing terminology, relational healing. The connection between a patient's will and their physiological response is not theoretical. We saw it demonstrated in this case in ways that are documentable and repeatable. He paused. I am recommending that we formalize an integrative wellness consultation process within our patient care framework, beginning with the position currently held by Ms. Zara Washington. 12 faces turned to look at her. Not laughing this time. Mr. Yoon, the CEO with the silver hair and tired eyes, studied her for a long moment from the head of the table. Then he nodded once. 3 weeks later, Zara sat in the garden outside the city. Chairman Baek was beside her, moving carefully, still recovering, a cane in one hand and the smooth stone in his jacket pocket. Minjun walked a little ahead on the garden path, giving them space. The late afternoon light came through the trees in long, soft lines. The garden smelled like earth and green growing things, and the particular alive smell that Zara recognized from the hills of Holt's Crossing. She had her grandmother's notebook open in her lap. She was adding to it. New observations. New understanding. The things Seoul had taught her that Mississippi hadn't known to prepare her for. The place where Miss Della's wisdom and Dr. Kang's science had found, despite everything, a common language. She was going to take all of it home. Not yet, but soon. She was going to sit at Miss Della's kitchen table, her hip healing, her eyes still sharp, her handwriting still big and looping and certain, and she was going to read every new page out loud. And Miss Della was going to listen the way only Miss Della could listen. And then she was going to say something wise that Zara would write down immediately. And the notebook would grow a little fuller. And the chain would hold. Chairman Baek stopped walking. He was looking at a section of the garden, older plants, thick-rooted, decades deep in the earth. He stood there without speaking. His free hand moved to his jacket pocket and found the stone. Zara watched his face. And she saw something there she had not seen before. Not in the hospital. Not in the suite. Not in any of the 14 careful days of slow return. She saw a man who had come back. Not to who he was before. You never go back to before. Miss Della had taught her that. Healing ain't a return trip, baby. It's a new road that starts from where you are. But back to something. To the thread of himself that had been there before the empire and the grief and the long punishment of not returning to this garden. He turned and looked at Zara. Thank you, he said simply. She smiled. Thank my grandmother. He reached into his jacket pocket. He held out the smooth stone. Give this to her, he said. From the garden. Tell her, one root woman to another. Zara took the stone. Hold it in her palm. It was warm from his pocket. She closed her fingers around it. One root woman to another. Miss Della was going to love that. The end. She brought nothing to Seoul but her grandmother's wisdom. They said it wasn't enough. The chairman's recovery proved them all wrong. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel to support our growth. We pour everything into every story we tell. And we are just getting started. Leave a love emoji for Miss Della. She deserved her flowers. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where our family is watching from. We will see you in the next story.